Today, it's Thanksgiving week and the official kickoff of the holiday season in pandemic-stricken America. And, well, a lot of economists are worried. Plus, close to 3 million people boarded flights between Friday and Sunday, despite a plea from the CDC to avoid holiday travel. But even with traffic at an 8-month high, airlines are still bleeding cash. And finally, Tesla shares kick into high gear after a big call from one Wall Street firm. I'm Mackenzie Sigalos, and this is CNBC After Hours. Stocks rose higher today. All three major indices finished in the green after yet another vaccine candidate showed positive results in clinical trials. British pharmaceutical giant AstraZeneca said this morning that its COVID-19 vaccine has an average efficacy of 70%. Markets, however, hit their highest point of the day after news crossed that President-elect Joe Biden selected former Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen to be Secretary of the Treasury. Now, remember, Wall Street is familiar with Yellen. She led the central bank for 4 years, from 2014 to 2018. So Yellen is widely viewed as a safe political choice. And assuming she gets confirmed by the Senate in January, she will inherit an American economy weakened by the coronavirus pandemic and weighed down by high unemployment. The holidays usually give the economy a big boost, but with the economic recovery appearing to lose momentum, the strength of the 2020 season is still unknown. A group of over 100 economists say that the best way to boost consumer spending is another round of stimulus checks. CNBC's Ylan Mui has all the details.
A group of 125 economists have signed a new letter today urging Congress to send out another round of stimulus checks. The letter calls them the most direct, effective, and equitable way to ensure that the economic recovery continues. And some of the people who are signing this letter include Jason Furman, President Obama's former economic advisor, as well as Alan Blinder, the former vice chairman of the Federal Reserve. The letter reads, "A stimulus at the scale of the recession will boost consumer spending, driving the economic recovery and shortening the recession." A recent survey by Franklin Templeton and Gallup found that many Americans are planning to cut their holiday budgets this year as hope dims for help from Washington. According to the poll, without another round of checks, 37% of Americans say they'll spend less this season. But if Congress were to step in, that number would drop to 30%. Now, the letter doesn't specify how big the checks need to be, but Democrats have proposed another round of $1,200 checks for adults, matching the first round of stimulus, as well as boosting the amount for kids to $1,200 as well. But there's a lot of debate about this in both parties, with critics concerned that some people who don't need the checks might still get the benefit. Now, the letter emphasizes that the best way to use direct payments is by targeting it to low-income households. And they say that's the best way to ensure that minority communities that have been hit hardest by this virus do not get left behind.
Okay, let's get to our sound check. Here's a roundup of the day's biggest action and what the top newsmakers and business leaders had to say on CNBC's airwaves.
Our geography in the Midwest, upper Midwest, has been seeing unprecedented numbers of infections and case growth. In Minnesota, our positivity rate is 15%, but in surrounding states, it's as high as 50%.
I think in the United States, a time frame of May to July can be realistic, depending on the manufacturing capacity. I think if you talk about the globe, I think we will face still a roller coaster time in 2021.
The governor initially contracted for 300,000 doses. We've got about 80,000 on hand, ready to go, and we'll have that full 300,000 by sometime in early January, we expect.
This notion of we may have a W, and there's certain companies that are going to have difficulties and certain households that are going to suffer if we don't have a fiscal package. I think that's what the market is missing. It's the element of the journey.
More people flew on airplanes over the weekend than at any other point during the pandemic. Between Friday and Sunday, nearly 3 million people passed through TSA checkpoints at the nation's airports. Now, Sunday's total of 1,047,000 passengers is the largest since March. But even with the uptick in travel, crowds are substantially smaller than normal. Even Sunday's high point is 60% lower than airport traffic on the same day in 2019. Now, it's a dilemma for airlines, which are still bleeding money. They need to drum up business to stay afloat, but national public health experts like the CDC are begging the American public to forego traveling. CNBC.com's Leslie Josephs explains.
This is probably one of the most painful Thanksgivings, probably on record for airlines. If you think about it, it's one of the busiest travel times of the year. Executives were hoping that COVID cases would start to decline, and then when we got into fall, we would see a little bit of a rebound, especially around Thanksgiving and Christmas. Because of coronavirus, because of the CDC warning that had come out telling people essentially not to travel, we had more than 1 million people traveling both Friday and on Sunday, which is the first time since the middle of March. So we're at more than an 8-month high, which sounds great. It's actually bad because compared with last year, it's still down 55%. So for people flying right now, there is really a patchwork of regulations in various states. And I think that's one of the deterrents of traveling is that, one, it's changing so quickly. And you don't know if your state is going to be on another state's list, aside from all the other health risks and sort of ways to keep themselves safe. Planes are still not flying full. This is, of course, a really peak week. The planes will likely be fuller than they were in the previous weeks or what we saw in October. The airlines are still burning cash. A few of them had hoped to stop bleeding cash by the end of the year. That is looking increasingly unlikely, and we've seen executives come out and warn about that. So far this year, the top 4 U.S. airlines, Delta, United, American, and Southwest, have lost more than $20 billion. They're expected to lose money again in the fourth quarter. Airlines are begging lawmakers to give them more aid. And if we have to go back to March when the CARES Act came out, passenger airlines in the United States got $25 billion. And that was dedicated solely to paying their workers. The terms were through September 30th. So airlines are kind of in this tough position because you have federal health authorities telling people not to travel, and then yet they're running a business and they need to drum up revenue. I mean, they have a duty to their shareholders and they have to run a business so they can, employees, of course, want to get paid too. So I think they're sort of in a tough spot.
Okay, time for today's numbers round. Let's kick it off with 1,000. Shares of Tesla hit another record high today after analysts at Wall Street firm Wedbush raised their bull case price target to $1,000 a share. The stock traded within a few dollars of the $520 price range today. But keep in mind, this is Wedbush's bull case, meaning it's their most optimistic outlook and best possible scenario. For Tesla, that means big demand spikes in markets like Europe and China in 2021. Wedbush's current base case price target on Tesla shares is far more measured, coming in at $560 instead. Next, 7 million. 7 million daily packages will likely be delayed between now and Christmas as a result of overcapacity in the global supply chain. That's according to industry firm ShipMatrix. These estimates come as shoppers are projected to spend $10 billion shopping online on Black Friday this year, a 39% jump from 2019 levels. Now, FedEx recommends that customers shop early to guarantee that gifts arrive in time for Christmas, which is just over 1 month away. And finally, 62 million. 62 million households streamed Netflix's The Queen's Gambit in its first 28 days on the platform. That's according to a tweet from the company out earlier this afternoon. That's a record. Netflix says the show is its biggest scripted limited series in history. The streaming giant also claims that Google searches for how to play chess have hit a 9-year peak. That's it for After Hours, but before we go, here's one more thing to keep an eye on. Early tomorrow morning, we'll get a peek at Best Buy's books when they report third quarter earnings. During the second quarter, which included much of the national lockdowns, online sales were 240% higher than in 2019. Did those all-important digital sales slide during the summer months? We'll have all the numbers on CNBC.com and on the CNBC app. We'll be back here in our home office tomorrow and Wednesday with new editions of After Hours, so be sure to catch us then.